Great. So hello again, everybody. My name is Natalie Szabo, and I will be your moderator for the final segment of tonight's candidate forum. In this segment, we'll be speaking with current Governor Jay Inslee, who is running for re-election. His opponent, Loren Culp, is not in attendance tonight. For those of you who might just be tuning in, this forum is hosted by the Associated Students of Western Washington University's Office of Civic Engagement. Our goal is to activate students towards becoming informed and involved participants in the political system. For everyone tuning in live, you can submit additional questions that we may have time to share with Governor Inslee at the end of the segment. Just find the Q&A button at the bottom of your options bar to submit a question. Governor Inslee, thank you so much for being here. We're going to start off by giving you time for a short introduction. You have 90 seconds and you can go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to join the Vikings today. My introduction is the most important thing I can tell you is I'm a father of a Western grad who fell in love with your college when my son was learning the fine arts of public policy. Now is developing trails in King County so people can get out in the environment. The second thing you should know about me is I love the work that Western is doing against climate change. This has been not only a passion of mine, but an existential threat to our state and our nation and our small little blue planet. And there's really no place with a more concentrated, both intellectual resources and desire than Western Washington University. And I want to thank the entire college for what they're doing in this regard. We know that this is something that will be a challenge through the lifetimes of the people who are students. And I'm just glad we have a college who will foster not only an awareness of this, but the technical and policy skills that you're developing to be able to tackle this beast. Now, we have another beast we're fighting right now, which is COVID. And you know that I believe in science and in fighting COVID and in fighting climate change. And Western is providing students with science and policy chops to be able to do both. I'm confident in our ability to do that because we've had such great success even before COVID hit us. So thanks for a chance to talk about a bright future for us.
Absolutely. We're super glad to be able to have a chance to chat with you tonight. So we're going to jump right into our questions, and I'll set my timer for 2 minutes for each one. And so for our first question, it's very relevant to many of the people who are in the audience here tonight. And what we are wondering is, what actions will you take to support college students in Washington?
Well, it's a list. I'll start with a thing that to me is the best thing, one of the best things we've done. And frankly, one of the things I'm proudest of while I've been in office, and that is we have recognize the enormous financial burden of getting a college education now. In my day, if you worked summers and had a couple jobs during the year, you could finance your education. Those days are long past. And so I am very proud that we have created the single best, most generous, and importantly, most equitable financial aid package in the United States. And those who know the respective programs and states will tell you that. And it's the most equitable because it makes sure that those that are most in need, in fact, get the need. And you can legitimately say that people can now afford a college education because it's based on your need. It's based on a principle of equity, and we need to develop more equity in our society. Another reason I love Western students is they believe in ending the horrendous economic inequality that we have. But we will also do things, this isn't in your question, but I do want to mention it. We want every young person to have a vision for their future, even if they're not going to a 4-year college. And that's why I'm very proud that we've started an apprenticeship program. It's called Career Connect Washington, so that students can have apprenticeships for advanced manufacturing and skill sets and the like. The third thing I'll say is making sure that people have health care. I'm proud that we have, because of our efforts in Obamacare, one health care for 800,000 people. And I intend to fight the Trump administration and the Republican Party that is committed to taking away from that health insurance. I know everybody's young and vigorous at Western because you're enjoying the outdoors, but we all need health insurance. And I'm going to be a very resolute and dedicated champion to make sure you don't lose that. Now there's more, but we run out of time.
Thank you. Okay, on to our next question, also on the theme of education. What are you doing to ensure that under-resourced students of all ages don't get left behind amidst the highly online technical learning environment that's been necessitated by coronavirus?
Really important question, very timely. I met with a couple dozen superintendents of school districts today talking about this exact issue. The first thing I will say is to try to minimize the disruption now. We are trying to provide school districts with ways to have more on-site learning. And we are encouraging districts, particularly in the early grades, to use the science we now have become familiar with to be able to safely return to the classroom. And so we're working with districts to help them in that direction. That there has been some stumbles in that regard, but we believe that we can continue to return people to the classroom over time, starting in the early grades to minimize the disruption. But we also know that there is a tremendous technological gap that many children do not have access to technology or a person at home to help them. So one of the things we're doing is I hope to free about $24 million in the next several weeks to be able to acquire laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots to reduce that technological gap. But even though we've done those things, we know that there is going to be a need for a remediation to the losses that our students have had. There's just no way you can have a similar, equal experience remotely, at least for many children. And that's not for lack of trying. Our educators are doing a crackerjack job on this. They're innovating, they're working hard, they're developing new ways to connect to their students. But you just can't expect it to be equal. So we are going to have to figure out a way to remediate those losses. I will be talking to many people, including your College of Education, I hope, to get ideas about the best way to do that. It might be mentorship. It might mean additional days during the summer. It might be whole different additional quarters for children who need it. But we need to make sure that that gets done. We can't just pass these children off and call it good if they've lost perhaps a year of insight or on-site instruction.
Thank you. Okay, continuing on the topic of the pandemic, what is your vision for a recovery plan for Washington amidst coronavirus?
Well, first off, I want to say, although this is a hard time for all of us, certainly it's the hardest time to go to college in my memory with the difficulties that you've experienced, but I'm confident in our ability to rebuild our economy as well or better than any other state in the nation. And the reason I'm confident is because we have demonstrated our ability to do that, because we did that before COVID. We built the best economy in the United States. And it is because we adopted, or in part, because we adopted policies that help build an economy. We've got the best family and medical leave policies in the United States to make it so you can have a full-time profession. We have one of the best and will have the first public option for healthcare in the United States. I have implemented the best overtime rules in the United States so that people can actually get paid adequately when they have overtime. As we talked about, we've embraced both tremendous access to colleges with our financial aid package and an apprenticeship program so that we have the skilled people that can do the advanced manufacturing work. So the combination of this environment has created the best place to do business in the United States. Don't take it from me, ask Business Insider magazine. And we're going to continue to advance those kind of policies to be able to rapidly bring back our economy. Now, to do that, first things first, we need to beat down this virus. We need to wear masks. We need to defeat the Donald Trump effort to diminish the importance of wearing masks and social distancing. The fastest way we can reopen our economy is do the thing to beat down this virus as fast as humanly possible. Now, we have been experiencing the ability to reopen some of our businesses in the last couple of months, bowling alleys, agritourism, and and restaurants and the like. But we need to continue on this path so we get back in the saddle.
Thank you.
And then I forgot, hire Western grads every chance you get too. That's the secret to a great economic recovery.
Definitely a crucial aspect. Okay, next question. Washington is increasingly seen as a state that is difficult to live in for people who are not wealthy. How will you work to ensure that Washington stays affordable for middle and low income people?
Yeah, this is a real frustrating challenge because we're victims of our own success. The reason we have rising housing prices and relatively high cost of living is because everybody in the country wants to live in Washington State. They want to move here because we have such a great economy. It's such a beautiful place to live. We got great colleges like Western. So as a result of people moving in here, and we welcome all the innovative talent, it drives up the prices. It drives up dramatically the price of housing. And every time the price of housing has gone up, we've had increased homelessness. So we are victims of our own success. We have to realize that. Now, what we can do about that is to adopt any number of policies to reduce the income inequality that we have experienced. And this is a horrendous problem for our community. And we need to do that in many, many ways, starting with a minimum wage. And I'm pleased that we have the highest minimum wage in the United States. We have one of the healthiest healthcare programs so that people can afford health insurance. And as I've indicated, we'll have the first public option to continue to expand healthcare to get to universal healthcare in the United States. We need to continue to work on some of our childcare options and early education for our children to end some of the inequality in education. We want all our students to be ready for first grade so no one falls behind. So this suite of things we need to embrace are ways to address the income inequality that we are now seeing, and the fact that it is more difficult for folks on the lower part of the wage scale to compete because of our tremendous economy. I believe that fairness is a human virtue, and we've got to adopt policies that embrace that.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along, I have institutionalized racism, sexism, ableism, and gender identity bias is a major concern for people of all ages and identities within our state. What actions will you take to address systemic discrimination in Washington?
Well, there's a lot of things. I'll start with maybe the thing that's most recent. I think we need to help people understand the embedded intolerance and implicit bias that surrounds us, and just recognizing that is important. That's why we have had training with my leadership in recognizing implicit bias and how to avoid it. We need to embrace equity from an organizational principle. So we have started an equity office in our government so that the equity office will try to make sure that we put equity into all of the agencies in our state. Third, we need to build our budgets around equity. So I've instructed my agencies that when they propose their budgets, they will propose ones based on equity. I want them looking through the lens of equity and racial equity when they propose a budget. Then there are all the things we need to do in law enforcement. As you know, or you may or may not know, I've started a task force to look at how we handle police citizen violence. We want to make sure we have a completely independent investigation system when there's incidents of violence. And we have a very independent prosecutorial decision. But I don't think we should stop in law enforcement. We have to look at this throughout our system. In education, we need to ask why young Black males are subject to such disproportionate discipline in our school system so that these children don't get left behind. We have to find ways to allow small business people of color to have a fairer shot at getting contracts with the state of Washington. This is frankly something that we need to do some work on to bring more equity in our state contracting so that small business have a fair shot. So in sum, we've got to look at equity throughout our systems to advance as Martin Luther King, the arc of the moral universe. And I think we can. I think this is a magic moment the consciousness of our nation has been raised, and we got to move forward.
Thank you. A follow-up that is adjacent to my last question. What is your position on defunding law enforcement agencies?
Well, I think we need to embrace a concept of service with humility. This is actually the motto of the Washington State Patrol. And we need to make sure that is throughout our law enforcement culture. And I think, as I mentioned, there's a number of things we can do to make sure that if there is violence between police and citizens, that there is a just result of that. It's appropriate, independent, and fair to all concerned. But we've got to focus on preventing that violence to start with. I think there are some creative things we should think about, particularly around how we prevent these tragedies around mental health. We've had a lot of tragedies where a person is having a mental health episode that ends up in violence. And having a way to bring more mental health professionals on the scene to try to prevent that is something that ought to be considered. Now, I don't support, however, things that would end up increasing response times by police officers. They do have a critical public safety responsibility. So I would not do things that would cripple their ability to respond when there's a call from a citizen in help. When somebody's burglarizing your home, you want somebody to be able to come in time. But I think there's things we can do in training as well. We have led the nation in de-escalation training. Barack Obama, I was kind of proud, said that we had the best de-escalation training in the United States, but there's things we can do to improve, particularly on this recognition of mental health issues and stopping the kind of holds that can end up with tragic consequences. So that needs a look at.
Thank you. Okay, and then our last prepared question, what actions will you take to address climate change in Washington?
Well, you're restricting me to 2 minutes for something I've spent 20 years working on, so that's kind of tough. First off, I'd like to work with everybody at Western to make sure they get fully engaged in this battle. Just real briefly, we know reduction of our carbon footprint is a absolute necessary for the continuation, literally, of the way we live our lives. And we've seen that in the fires most recently in our state, the floods in the Midwest, the hurricanes in the Southeast, the rising sea level. We have no choice but to build a clean energy economy. And I am dedicated to do that. We've had some big success. We have the best 100% clean energy grid bill in the United States. And we have the best energy efficiency programs for our buildings in the United States. In fact, this afternoon, I met with my task force that is embracing energy efficiency in the state buildings that we're building. But we have a lot more work to do. In our state, we need a clean fuel standard. We need to have a rule that requires the energy companies to give consumers cleaner fuel. Now, this is a health issue in many, many ways, because we've had an epidemic of asthma and respiratory problems because people are breathing toxic material from burning fossil fuels. And it's a first order health issue, but it's a second order health issue because if they're breathing it when it comes out of smokestacks and tailpipes, but now we're also breathing the smoke by the fires that are burning up our state because of climate change. So our very ability to breathe healthy air is at great risk. And so we need a clean fuel standard. This has been successful in California and other places. The reason I'm mentioning it is I hope that you will help me pass that in the next session of the legislature. I need you to get to know your legislators and tell them what you think, and don't let them come home without it. Western could be critical in this effort. It's the remaining piece of the puzzle, so I'm going to ask for your help to pass that come January.
Thank you so much. And Governor Inslee, that was our last prepared question. And I know that you are an incredibly busy man, but I'm wondering if you have time for just one student question from a really fantastic student.
I've got one.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. This comes from Sargon Honda. She is our AS Senate pro tempore. And her question is, what is your commitment to supporting Black, Indigenous, and POC students during the anti-racism movement? How do you plan on assisting them in fighting for equity, inclusion, and justice in their institutions and universities?
Well, I would like to listen to them. I've found that listening is the most important thing in this thing. So I'd like to talk to these young leaders about ideas that they have on how I can do that. Now, the things I've mentioned tonight, I believe can be very helpful, including the financial aid, including on our issues to improve law enforcement, including in efforts to improve career access, including our efforts to embrace equity throughout our state operations. I think these things will be helpful, but I'm sure people can give me some additional ideas. So I'm all ears here, and we're going to have discussions about this in upcoming months. I hope you'll share them with me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to answer that. If you'd like, you can take 1 minute for a closing statement.
I'll try to make it less than a minute. Please, please vote, and please take it upon yourself to get 2 or 3 other votes. Look, when your generation is the smartest, most scientifically literate, most publicly spirited generation in American history, and I don't say that as smoke, it's just true. And when you vote, good things happen. I would ask you, first off, I would be honored if I can win your vote, but I really would ask you to think about all the people your age or a little older, maybe a little younger, who may not vote, your nieces, your nephews, your neighbors, your employer's cousin. If everybody on this call could get 2 more people to vote who wouldn't otherwise vote, good things are going to happen in our state. So I'd ask for the honor of your vote, and I'd ask for the honor of going and getting a whole bunch of other people to vote for whoever they want to vote for. When Vikings vote, good things happening in Washington. So thank you very much, and please be well and mask up.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Governor Inslee. We really appreciate it.
All right, be well.
Thank you.
Go Vikings, take care.
Okay, well, that is the end of our 2020 local and state candidate forum. Thank you so much to all of the candidates who spoke with us tonight. Huge thank you to my co-moderator, Stefan, to the Office of Civic Engagement for hosting this event, and to the Office of Admissions for enabling the webinar platform to us. Shout out to Allie, you were a huge help. Thank you so much. And most of all, thank you so much to everybody who tuned in tonight. Civic engagement is more important than ever, and I am sincerely grateful to all of those who work to stay informed. So enjoy the rest of your night, keep masking up, and stay safe. Thank you all. Good night.